Alright, yeah, I guess I'll just, anyway, they made a video with a stupid title. Stefan Molyneux, and then he dragged Piro and nitpicks about, these are separate subjects, completely, entirely separate, and doesn't make that clear in the title of the video. I almost didn't watch the video because I said, oh fuck, this guy's gonna start defending Stefan Molyneux. Oh, fuck. Anyway, so anyway, there's some two slit stuff here that I'll have to deal with, but, wait, this camera's fucked up. Anyway, but this is two slit stuff, so yeah, so we'll get back to that, because this other asshole, sorry, but you know, you all do seem like you're all bleeding into one big asshole, just all over the place. Just joined the religion today, the true God, by the way, proof, magic particles, gravity itself, that's not it. Can't be this many frickin' fucking comments, can there? Where was it? It's this asshole, whatever he is. Posted some stupid ass retarded links. Oh, here we go. Alright, so this is the two slit one. Okay, the fact that you're denying this caused by a wave mechanism. I'm denying, yes, I'm denying that you have proof that photons going through slits are the same as water going through slits, and that any wave property that water might have, it's a medium, the wave construction, everything about it is, yes, nothing like the slits experiment, that the results are nothing like each other, technically, and that you're talking about a pattern that is the simplest pattern possible, which is on, off, on, off. I mean, the pattern couldn't be simpler, and yet you're claiming this proves light is a wave. Obviously, yeah, I'm saying your proof is short. It's not enough of a proof. People have, like, Jesus' blood in vials. Is that proof? I'm at a loss for words. So you're at a loss for words because your proof is so weak you think people should believe it anyway. They should make a fundamental decision about how they're going to perceive the universe. Bent space, all kinds of bullshit based on this vacuous evidence, and it's vacuous. Here's a video you want of water waves. So he posts this link to this. This is what MIT does, right? So these are supposed to be smart people. I almost went to this fucking college. I mean, it's funny. You know, maybe I would have fixed it, right? Yeah, maybe I should have gone just to fix it. They obviously don't know what the fuck they're doing either. Well, I had the demo. Here it is, Ripple Tank. Okay, so, you know, they're not even smart enough to make a video that, you know, this bar comes up and blocks, you know, and this, you can't freeze frame the video. I mean, it's just really not very technically brilliant. But anyway, so this is what he's calling single slit wave diffraction. Yeah. So here we have this tank. So that's the thing, okay, and it's making waves, and it's making them fast already, but you can sort of see there's a wavelength here that the water tolerates, and that's it, okay, because of the slit size and the thickness. It's a big thick thing, right? You saw the big piece of wood they have here, big piece of wood, and we know that water waves are created by that tension with the surfaces. It's the tension in the water. The water doesn't want to break once it's attached to itself, the molecules. And it's that tension that creates the wave. So, well, anyway, so obvious. So anyway, at a regular rational wavelength, right, where you have actually good waves, there's no diffraction pattern at all. So what do they have to do? Well, we have to do something to make a wave pattern because we don't have one. That's what they have to do. So they increase the speed of the waves by, well, you can't really do that, right? So what are you going to do? So now they have what they call a wider slit, and you can, well, let's just let it play out. But see, you can't freeze it so you can see the middle here. But, you know, clearly they're already in trouble because they're, well, anyway, let's just go, because it's turbulence they're creating. But anyway, it doesn't matter. There's no 42 bar pattern that's going to be created here. There's nothing, as I pointed out in light, that they're going to duplicate with this mechanism. And you can sort of understand clearly why that's going to happen. But anyway, let's get them up to speed. So they keep increasing the speed. Let's go. Come on. All right. Increase speed, increase speed. And so now you can freeze it at any one of these moments. And you'll see that, okay, here they're almost a half wavelength off, which you have to be to create the next mark, right? Now on this side, there's no, you can see the waves are still continuous with these waves. So they don't even have a balanced system. So that lack of symmetry right away should tell you something's wrong with this experiment, because there should be symmetry. And there's not symmetry. You can see clearly here, these are a half wavelength off. These are clearly not any wavelengths off. Well, they're doing technically is they're shoving too many waves through the opening at once. The waves are collapsing and creating more waves. So they're just creating a false mechanism, that is creating too much wave for the friction. So the point is the waves coming through, it has to move slower because of that adhesion. But they've got the waves coming in so fast that that slow adhesion, the next wave ends up breaking that adhesion point, so that the center wave is released because it breaks this adhesion point with the next wave coming in. And you'll notice that these wavelength never changes. So no matter how fast they make this stuff coming in, this wavelength doesn't change. So obviously this is the harmonic. So all they're doing here is creating a flute. Okay, they're blowing a bunch of frequencies in and getting the one harmonic out. That's not exactly what happens to light, is it? Do you think that's what's happening in the single slit light experiment? Do you? So it gets even worse. So they've maximized it. And again, you can see the same problem exists over here. You can see this wave is completely a phase, half a phase off. This wave is completely the same phase. So that didn't work. They've increased the frequency, and yet this wavefront is exactly the same wavelength. Look at this. This is just chaos now. They're turning this into just complete noise. So there's lots and lots of waves bouncing around in here now. And so what does it have to do with a single slit experiment or a single photon? I think a single photon does all of this before it goes through the slit. I don't think so. So now we're going up the higher frequency. So right there, look at that, right? See, as they change the frequency, the harmonics change, and so now they've captured these. They've got so much noise going on here that it's all turning into the same frequency harmonic, and that's now they've all lined up. You can see here, all lined up. They should be a wavelength difference, but now they're all perfectly lined up. So you're just playing with frequency now to create your pattern. So now go a little faster. I mean, this is all way too fast for like I said, for any of the normal wave creating functions to work. The slit isn't creating normal waves anymore because they're not dragging across the sides. What's happening is the wave fronts keep banging the edges off the waves, and they just keep breaking the waves. It's just breaking the waves with the next frequency of waves. So that's your explanation. Then photons go through a single slit, they slow down, and they wait for another photon to push them through. We know that doesn't happen, but single photons are shot through and they end up at the same place. So we know there's no dependency on the next photon pushing it through. So now we have these we have the same problem. We have no symmetry in this image. And then go a little faster. Okay, I think that's as fast as it. Yeah, I guess that's the fast they're going to turn it off now. So I mean, this is it. So we have basically the center peaks are always getting forced through because they just keep breaking. The edges of the waves break off, and you can see these waves are getting flatter and flatter and flatter, because they're just breaking the waves. They're breaking the edges off every time it goes near the slit, because it can't possibly adhere to the side of the slit, so it just breaks the waves, and of course the extra waves go out the side. I mean, This has nothing to do with creating a real wave that gets diffracted. It's completely faking by creating this noise you're shoving through the hole. And you can't see that? You think this is proof of something? This is proof of diffraction? You think this is wave diffraction? It isn't even a good example of a wave getting diffracted, because it's turbulence. Go look that word up, turbulence. Fuck. And you'll be so arrogant. You sit there and post these arrogant, obnoxious comments like you've done something here. You've undone me somehow. And that's what you show up to the table with, that piece of crap as proof. With a narrow slit, single opening, we see a plane wave emerge as a spiral wave on the other side of the barrier. This can be explained by the Huygens-Fresnel principle. Again, you keep bringing up Huygens, and it's not a real thing, okay? The reason why they call it a principle is because they're scared to death to call it a law. Because it's absolute nonsense. It's a made-up nonsense. There's no such thing as little waves on top of all the waves, okay? A wave front is not made of a bunch of little waves making the next wave front. It's fake. And the only thing they use it for in the single slit experiment with light is so they can put a 1/2 in the equation and cut the single slit in half and create 2 photons to interfere with each other. I mean, if you can't see that simple fake, I have no help for you. It's like not seeing dark matter as a contrivance, which states that each point in the slit forms its own spherical wave source. Well, you know, writing what they put in the video isn't very bright, because it just makes them look stupid, and you. So this is a quote from the actual stupid website. And that's what they're teaching in physics classes. And people ask, well, why are physicists so dumb? And why are they all so stupid? Well, because they go to frickin' places like MIT, and this is the nonsense they teach them. It's a good page, by the way, particularly near the bottom of photon questions. Oh, so this is another experiment page. And, you know, I mean, I'm just not going to do this forever. You know, I'll go look at some more of this stuff, but this is not. I'm not going to do this forever. You're saying this is hard evidence of something. I'm saying it's the weakest evidence. Oh, well, look, let's do this page, right? I think I have this one actually. Yeah, okay. This is one of the equation pages I was linked to by somebody else, maybe. So it has this, you know. I mean, right off it does something like 4 pi, and you're just saying 4 pi. Well, can't you just say 12 point something? Why are you doing 4 pi? Convenient, huh? You know, I mean, obviously. But here, look, here we go. It's a standard bullshit image, right? So you're telling me I'm supposed to trust this as an authority when they use, this is even the most deceptive way to even do the single slit experiment. They must have had a tiny slit to create this huge disproportion. I've never done a single slit and got that bad a result. So, I mean, they must have had a preposterously narrow slit to get this kind of result. Because it's, I can't do that. You know, I can't make it work that badly. You know, so I'm supposed to trust these people, right? When that's what they do to an experiment. So, you know, here we got a rectangular object. So, I mean, it's just kind of obvious, right? Obviously, if you just made it into a square, you get the same diffraction pattern. Now, isn't that a much more realistic image? And do you get anything like that in your water wave pattern? No. And we're back to Newton's rings here. Duh. On, off, on, off, on, off. But look, even Newton's rings here isn't anything like this single slit in the one sense that these are supposed to be the same size, right? I mean, these dark spots are supposed to be the same width as the light spots, and quite obviously in this Newton ring example there's no such parity. So, I mean, you have this math that somehow does all of this. It somehow, you know, somehow it accounts for the fact that every one of these images is quite different. So here we have single and double slit diffraction. Separation is 7 millimeters. Right, so they're using again the same bullshit, right? Do the double slit with, you know, a total opening of this, and then do the single slit with half that as a total opening. Now, if all they had to do was do this single slit with the same total opening width, so if they did the single slit with the same total opening width, they would have got the same fucking image, except it won't have these breaks in it. And that gets to the Hothlidae. So let's do that. All right. Well, anyway, this is a page I have to go through. I mean, this math is really, really obtusey. So, you know, I'm not probably going to have much luck with it. But we know what it is. It's Huygens. It's engineered math, and that's all it is. And you want to say that your engineered math is absolutely proof, then go ahead and think that. I think it's very weak evidence of any obligation. Oh, I guess it was Mr. Roberto, too, guy who posted those links, the technical math links. But it's all the same difference. So yeah, I will do comments some other time, I think. Oh, how come there's so few comments? What video is this? Oh, this is Piro's video. Well, this might be worth reading then. Let's see. I know why he's gone off the deep end with this shit. Again, I'm the one going off the deep end. You're resorting to, again, just contrived math, fake principles of Huygens, dark matter, to defend some idea that light, photons, this thing that always lands with a solid corpuscle that every Feynman diagram doesn't think is a wave. I mean, it draws it as a little squiggle, but quite obviously it leaves it very real vectors, and it goes in as a quantity of energy. You know, there's no doubt about that. There's nothing in the waviness of it that has any relevance to the function of it when it goes into an electron. The energy in, energy out is quite obvious. And you're going to call me a zealot. Yeah, well, I'll read that whole... I mean, I'll do comments some other time. But yeah, I didn't realize there was comments that stupid. So we'll go ahead and read them. Here's a Piro response. Nice person, Gary, in the world overall. I'm the nicest person to Gary in the world overall. I mean, you're such a piece of scum, you motherfucking cunt. Yeah, I just don't have anything. I can't, you know, possibly say anything. Like I said, Piro hasn't made one rational critique of my document. My document has to do with a theory of gravity, magnetism, and you know, understanding velocity as a function of the fields inside of you, in terms of the disposition of these photons that still exist inside of you. He has said nothing relevant to any of this. Nothing. I mean, he's a despicable shithead. Slandering despicable shithead. Lying despicable shithead. Anyway, she fell for it. You know, chicks are dumb. Yeah. Okay then, I'm sorry. I thought you hated Gary. Yeah, Piro is a fucking egomaniacal, self-interested fucking prick, and that's all he is, okay? He just hates to death that somebody had an idea, you know, that he can't somehow steal or put his name on it or in some way take credit for it or whatever. He's just about Piro. He's not about anything goddamn else, and that's what he has demonstrated by this silly, preposterous, putrid, sickening, disgusting, insipidly stupid response to my theory. Quite obviously, he's just got penis envy so goddamn bad. Anyway, alright, where is Hothlidae? Stupid video. Alright, so this is Hothlidae. He's supposed to understand something about this two-slit thing, right? Doesn't really understand shit. So this is what I'm talking about. Okay, I don't need them to necessarily mathematically recognize this degrade, except they should recognize that it happens as a fact. It is this cessation, and then gradually getting brighter and then dimmer again, and then gradually brighter and dimmer again. That's the two-slit phenomenon. It's hard to explain, okay? I can explain it if it just did a straight line thing across, because then I could just explain how it's just the single slit experiment with two single slits, one wide one and one narrow one. So that would be easy. But the fact that it does this breaking thing, that's a little hard to explain by anyone's theory, mine or Pierrot's or Hofladay's. That's the one that's problematic here. And obviously Hofladay won't be on that subject.
Yeah, so, if this was the slide, that's the kind of agreement. He says
so it's agreeable, say, when I use the word field, that he understands I'm using the word field to describe something real. Where when they use the word field, the physicists, they're often using it in some sort of virtual field way, okay, because they don't really have a definition of what this stuff is. But that's the irony. When they're using the word field, they're usually using it about a magnetic field or something else, where I'm obviously saying those are real photons, not fake photons. You know, they're real magnetons. They're not virtual, and they came from someplace, and they didn't come from bent space and warped time. Or any dimension called space-time. They came from these three dimensions we exist in.
Physics videos that he wants an explanation for the intensities as prescribed, and said there's no mathematical or theoretical framework to describe these intensities. Now the thing is in the quantum model, intensity of light is a null factor.
Well, that's not true. The intensity of the light, as Feynman points out, has to do with how many land somewhere. The more that land somewhere, the more intense the light. So let's not play a game that that intensity doesn't have to do with the probabilities and the fact that there's a high probability of having one's land in the middle, and there's a less probability here, and a less probability here, and a less probability here. So what are you talking about?
There is the packet of energy and the strength, and that is it.
Again, and where did I give any indication that I was asking for somebody to subdivide photons into intensities and to say the single photon came at different intensities or some kind of notion like that? Of course, the pattern develops over the period of the photons being manipulated by the process of going through the slits. And they end up in a probabilistic location, and it's the number that end up in the location that I'm saying the math doesn't account for. It doesn't account in any way for the fact that there's a 60% probability that any one photon will end up somewhere in that central maxima, and then there's a 20% chance in the next one, and then a 10% chance in the next one, and a 5% chance in the next one. Duh. That's the probability. And the math doesn't account for it, first off, and second off, it doesn't even come close to accounting for the fact that it goes down to 0%, and then it starts going back up, 5, 10, 20, duh.
And it is on this account that, so if we can release photons in singular packages, yeah, and watch the interference pattern build up.
I mean, I said clearly in my video exactly that, didn't I? Didn't I say that this conversation always has to have its foundation is that whatever you say about this shit has to be applicable to single photons at a time, because that's apparently the standard, okay? It's been done, so to speak. So we know this has nothing to do with extra photons pushing. We know it has nothing. We just know it has to do with a photon goes through the material and there's a probability it ends up in a certain location. My argument is their math just says there's a location here, there's a location there, there's a location there. This location will have something landing on it, but it doesn't tell you how many land on it. That's my argument, that's rather weak math. And it's exceptionally weak in light of the fact that, again, this is the pattern you have to account for. Blob, 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 blob. That pattern is not in any way reflected in the math. Shit.
The built-up intensity, so to speak, number of points, is varying depending on how long you run the experiment.
Right, but as a percentage, it's not varying. So my point is the math should just recognize the percentage and just say that, yes, this will be, like I said, they can either take it out of a 100% total, or they can just take it as a percentage of the brightest location versus the least bright location, and do percentages that way. But certainly they can have a reference point.
Intensity is merely photons per second. This is why Einstein won his Nobel Prize for explaining the photoelectric effect insofar as ultraviolet light, when shined on a metal, copper.
I mean, I did this. I just mentioned this in my last video. What the fuck, man? I guess he didn't watch that.
Presumably.
Well, he must have, because he heard the field comment, but he apparently didn't pay attention to anything else.
And to try this as an experiment. Anyhow,
I mean, it's just such an uninteresting experiment. I mean, the fact that the infrared light doesn't come at a quick enough frequency, okay, for it to be converted by the electrons. It's not enough energy. And the ultraviolet light has more than enough energy. I mean, to do the kicking thing. It's not, I don't think it's really kicking, but you know, it doesn't do the kicking thing.
Ultraviolet light, regardless of the intensity, is capable of dislodging free electrons from copper. Whereas, say, blue light, no matter how much you turn up the strength of it,
well, you said red light.
Isn't. It's to do with the individual quanta, whether they have the energy or not.
No, it has to do with the frequency. How many come at the frequency? You just said frequency in the two-slit experiment. You seem to understand that there's more of them happening, okay, with the higher frequency. So yes, it's the tipping point argument again. Obviously, blue light for the same period of time throws more things at the target than red light in the same amount of time.
To dislocate the electron.
It's like the difference between throwing 50 baseballs at your fucking head and throwing 25 at your fucking head. If I throw 50 per second at your head, I'm probably more likely to knock your fucking head off. Probably.
So it's erroneous to demand the explanation.
Well, again, it's not erroneous to demand the explanation. For the people saying this is absolute proof of waves, we have the most accurate precision math in the universe, 10 million spaces down, decimal places, it's the most proven accurate theory in the universe, blah, 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 and yet their math doesn't even account for that simple thing. And again, it would just be a contrivance anyway to do this. I mean, this part would be the simple part, right? I mean, adding an equation that would account for the fact that it diminishes over space, that would be the easy part. Doing math to do this, that would be the tricky part. And again, the math doesn't do anything about the fact that this image is a projection anyway, which is another annoying feature from the most precise math in the universe that proves everything.
Of intensity. In the pictures that Inmendham shows and asks this question of why is the intensity the way it is,
I feel fucktard coming, so this just feels like this is going to be a fucktard moment. Here it comes. He's got his little fucktard thinker on full strength. What can I say that will be the most fucktarded thing possible? So here we come. I wish his volume was a little louder. Maybe I'll turn the volume up. I have a moment here. I just turn the volume up a little bit. His volume is super low.
These aren't the full. These are just interference patterns. They're two-slit interference patterns, but they are not the classical quantum mechanical two-slit experiment with the singular releases.
It wouldn't matter. I mean, this is just so bogus. The point is that single photons will give you the same fucking result. So what's your claim? It's your claim that if I shot single photons, I wouldn't get this same exact pattern? Is that your claim? So then we have two different experiments then, don't we? So then we have something to explain them. Then somehow when there's more photons going through, it creates these breaks. And when there's a single photons at a time, it doesn't? What's going to be your argument? That this is somehow an untraditional image of the two-slit experiment? I'm sorry, it's the accurate image of the two-slit experiment. These are not accurate images if this was a two-slit experiment. This is a two-slit pattern. Yeah, so here you go. So this is a two-slit pattern, but obviously it's a two-slit pattern that's been compressed by the spacing of the slit. So I'm just saying the real two-slit experiment is this one. What can I say? I mean, you could obviously cut these things off and show pictures of this and say that's the two-slit experiment, right? Right there. Okay, don't pay any attention to that stuff. But that stuff is what creates the 3 slit dots. Okay, so let's be clear. The 3 and the 4 slit dots, or the 5 slit dots. When the whole thing starts turning into dots, you know, these are the blobs that are going to become those dots. Jesus Christ.
Or photons or electrons. And they're very qualitative because from those pictures you can't really measure the intensity. There is just
well, again, of course you can. So I don't know where this is. These are just excuse making or something. I can't see the obvious intensity differences. Bullshit. I mean, frankly, bullshit.
Certain amount of saturation taking effect in the photographic paper or the optical instrument.
Again, this is just such bullshit. This is not a fucking artifact of the imaging. Okay, this is not an artifact of the imaging. Okay, this should be a bright and it's a dead. Okay, and that hasn't been explained. Why is that not a bright in there? I mean, this is not an artifact of the photographic paper or the camera lens or some other bullshit. It's a fundamental feature of the two-slit experiment.
On camera, and you can't be sure about anything about those intensities, I don't think.
Well, I think you're missing the whole point of the experiment then. So fine, whatever, expert man.
That was the swipe.
Alright, well my counter swipe is, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. There, that's my counter swipe. Try again.
I think there might have been another swipe. But so then, this is not really a swipe because it's something I only found out, or not so much found out. Yeah, it's good enough. I mean, the weight of it only came to me because, well, let me tell you. When you throw a tennis ball or an object, it doesn't move in a parabola. It moves in an approximate parabola. Even discount in a vacuum, when you model it, even when you model it in perfect scenario, it doesn't move in a parabola. Except
well,
it moves in a parabola if you...
Well, frankly, it will move in a parabola, right, if you graph it, okay, and bend the graph paper. Yeah, it'll move in a parabola.
Assume the planet is an infinite surface with a perpendicular gravitational force downward acting on the object. And I read this about 18 months, 2 years ago in Max Tegmark's book, and he said it offhand, but I instantly...
Yeah, I don't even know if you could measure that kind of subtle difference in the gravitational influence. But frankly, like I said, I don't see how this is at all interesting. As I've stated before, with Einstein's... Look, they can sit there and curve all the time they want to. They can curve the acceleration of the inverse square. They can take the parabola of the inverse square and say that's the curve things travel. It's not the curve they travel because they're gaining velocity the whole time, and that's why technically these things would, if they were doing real gravity instead of this fake gravity that they're modeling, you know, by bending curtains and shit, stuff would fly off and it would be a lot harder to capture things. But yeah, obviously you're creating a material funnel that's a lot different than the realistic funnel of real accelerations.
Like, I remember us, when I studied dynamics, us stating, you know, this assumption in where we proved it to be a parabola. But the Max Tegmark book on mathematical universe or something is he says, you know, if the sun shrunk down instantly to a black hole, our orbits wouldn't change. Similarly, if the Earth shrunk down to a black hole,
right. The argument is it's the same amount of mass. Mass causes the amount of gravity. Okay, so what's so surprising? Right? There's no surprise there. You're just taking advantage of people's intuition, where they think, well, if you made it smaller, it's less massive. But go ahead and theoretically try to do that and see what happens. Because I would almost argue that if you do compress mass to the, you know, the mass of the sun to the impossible size of a grape, all right, the fact is gravity will be substantially altered, because mass in the size of a grape will not be able to block the field energy with nearly the efficiency of a big giant sun mass. So the efficiency of the blockage, okay, that's creating gravity isn't going to take place. So your gravity is going to be substantially less because you're breaking the field dynamic.
Cool. The moon wouldn't change in its orbit. And so it is, if you threw a ball, you understand, while it was in airborne, the Earth shrunk down to a black hole, what would happen is where a parabola runs off to infinity, at the edges of the graph, so to speak, what would happen is that ball you...
This really isn't terribly interesting. It's just pointing out, just like the Earth pushing out of its orbit, the fact is you'll end up going, you know, you're going on a linear line, you're escaping the center of the gravity, and now the gravity's taking a longer vector, so you're technically under weaker gravity at the farthest pace you throw it. It depends on where you start as the center, whether the center is where the center of the peak of the ball is as you threw it, or whether the center is where you're standing. Obviously, if the center was where you were standing, and now you change the size dynamics of the Earth, you're going to change the vector, which means, yes, you're now further away, and by inverse square, your gravitational pull is going to be weaker.
True. Once the surface of the Earth had disappeared and gone into a black hole in a tiny concentrate region, that ball you threw would actually form an elliptical orbit. And thus, the more correct model is that balls follow the sliced off end of ellipses as paths.
Whether that even means anything, but the point is they don't do even that, okay? So I throw it up, it does that thing temporarily, and then it falls like a goddamn rock. Okay, once it gets rid of the velocity in that direction, it just goes down. No parabola involved. So anyway, enough of this crap. Oh, let's see if this... I might as well play the end.
See if that other little swipe of and then it can come to me. What's he been talking about? I think that's about it. I think he might have been doing another little swipe, little niggle nitpick with pyro parts. Give my brain a minute. Second.
Well, why don't you read some of his comments that he's responded to comments? Why don't you explain what the hell he's talking
The
about?
audio usually,
Why don't you do that?
it's okay. What's the problem with something Pyro said?
Everything Pyro has said that you should have a problem with.
Pyro talked about
Everything. Every single thing that comes out of his mouth you should have a problem with. Regarding physics. It's horrible.
particular corpuscles. Yeah, that must be it.
Yeah, that must be it. Okay. So again, this is the absolute proof argument. You know, this is, like I said, this doesn't really have anything to do with my paper and my theory, beyond the fact that I'm plainly claiming, okay, there's no absolute proof that photons are waves, and there's no proof that all the other tons would be waves. They're tons, and this doesn't have anything to do with this wavy shit. It's a contrivance. It's a misidentification of the complexity. Again, they had a choice. Simple thing goes towards complex thing, the matter. Which thing is causing the complex behavior? The complex matter or the simple thing I threw at it? And they went, oh, it must be the simple thing. Yeah, simple things are sneaky. They're doing the complexity. It doesn't have anything to do with it. The matter is simple. The matter is just simple things. That's simple. It's the little photon that's complicated. It is that silly. I mean, all this just comes down to a stupid guess. And they could have made an educated guess based on what I just said, which is, where do you think the complexity is coming from? The complex matter or the simple photon? And they got it wrong. Fuck. Alright, anyway, till next time.